Fun fact number one, I published a fantastic, if I do say so myself, stamp carving book in 2012 called Carve Stamp Play. And I have taught literally thousands of people how to carve stamps in my online classes, in my in-person workshops, through my book, through live TV, like all sorts of different ways. Now, I love stamp carving. I think it's one of those things that is surprisingly easy to start and then delightfully tricky to master. So there's lots of fun in figuring out how to translate your designs, your ideas into stamps, blocks, whether you want to go big or small or make patterns or do realistic illustration. Stamp carving really has so many options. So 11 years ago, I started something called Carve December. And it was all about carving a stamp every single day in December. So 31 stamps in one of the busiest months of the year. And I'm so delighted to say that it's had a life of its own. So this is year 11. And whether you are brand new to carving stamps or you're a super expert, I hope you will join us in for the fun. You can find a post all about it, which I will share the link to in the show notes. And this video is for those of you who are super beginners, never carved a stamp, and I'm telling you, grab an eraser, grab some Speedy Carve, grab whatever you have, and let's make a stamp. There are lots and lots of ways to carve a stamp. I happen to love this material, this pink stuff, called Speedy Carve, and this is a box of all of my scraps. Some of these are many years old and the rubber is still very soft and pliable, and it's great to carve. It makes it really easy, you know, if you have stiff hands or anything else. And the reason that I keep all my scraps is because they're great for making fun little stamps. So you can transfer your design. There are lots of classes, instructions on how to do it. I have some, there are tons on YouTube. Or you can simply take a ballpoint pen, a pencil won't work, and you can draw directly onto the rubber. So the design can be as simple or as complicated as you want it to be. Something that I find really useful is to take, these are permapaque markers. They're really great for marking blocks. I've tried Sharpies and lots of other markers, and they have a reaction with the rubber where they end up running dry, which is obviously not what you want. The thing I like about the permapakes is you can go ahead and just color the block, but now I can kind of see what it is I want to carve away, and I don't have to be super exact about it either. They also, I will say that these permapakes have like a wide chisel tip. You can see that there. And then they have this more narrow fine tip. So it's like whatever kind of space you're trying to fill. And they come in a wide variety of colors. So there are lots of carving tools on the market, and you can buy an inexpensive one like this one from Speedball, or a more expensive one like this one. This is not even the most expensive kind. So this has a fixed blade, meaning for this flex cut tool, I can't do anything about this blade. The blade is what it is. This has a removable blade so that I can go ahead and get, so here is the equivalent blade, and you can see that the size of the flex cut blade and the size of the Speedball blade are the same. So it's really sort of what you feel comfortable with. I like to have multiple handles because I might use this one just for small things, and then I can go ahead and I can put a bigger tip into my other handle. And again, if you take my Stamp Carving 101 class, I do, of course, break down exactly, you know, how to put the tool together. You can also find a free tutorial on YouTube. So now I have a small blade and a big blade, or you might want a small one and a mid-sized one. I mean, you can have as many handles as you want, or a complete set of fixed tools. It's entirely up to you. So a couple quick safety things about carving. I am working on top of a self-healing mat. You might want to work on top of a glass mat. Glass, there's a nice glide across glass. Self-healing tends to grab a little bit. I'm always going to carve away from myself, and I've done it before. If you put your finger here and you're carving towards yourself, you can really get a very, very bad and painful cut. You don't want that. I actually did it to myself recently and it was not nice. You are carving out an incredibly small amount of rubber. You will be surprised. So what I do is I just simply push the blade and notice the angle that I'm at. A lot of beginning carvers think that they need to be at a much sharper angle. I am barely not parallel, and you just saw this piece of rubber come out. This is how much rubber. This is how much rubber I'm taking out. It's really such a small amount of rubber. And again, I'm pushing away from myself and of course trying to avoid my fingers, which means I'm rotating the blade and I am keeping that at a very low angle. If you dig too deeply into the rubber, what's going to happen is you're basically going to gouge a big hunk out and there's going to be ripping, and it's just it's not great. Ripping and tearing of the rubber is not ideal. So again, I'm using my non-dominant hand to hold the block. I am very careful to try to keep my fingers out of harm's way. Trust me, cut yourself a few times and you'll get more and more careful. And again, I'm pushing away from myself and trying to keep it away from my fingers. Once I have this kind of moat cut around there, you know, you can switch up to your bigger blade and then you put one edge of the bigger blade into there and you can go ahead and scoop out the rest of the rubber. The reason that the marking is nice is because now I can see when I have tiny little bits of leftover rubber anywhere that I need to get rid of, instead of just accidentally having them later, because obviously as you carve away the pink, the underneath is just pink too. And again, I hate to be a stickler for safety, but I hope that you'll notice how often I keep my hands just out of trouble. And here's a great example of why marking the block is so important, because I can see that little bit of blue and that lets me know that I need to carve it away without having to wait until I print it to find that out. So if I want these lines here to be carved away, then that's pretty easy to do. I could also carve away the pink and leave the lines. Totally up to me how the stamp looks, but I think I'm going to carve away the lines. Lots of people carve their first stamps during Carve December, so don't be afraid if you're a total novice. So this looks pretty good to me. That means I think I'm ready to take a knife and cut away some of the excess rubber. The excess rubber does make it easier to hang on to, but it makes it harder to print because you want to see where the edges of your design are so that you can know, especially if you like repeat patterns the way that I do. This way you can know exactly where it is that you're printing. So I don't like to completely cut away the rubber because it makes the stamp really unstable. I want to keep enough to keep it stable. And then if I see any high points, I might carve those away. So now I am ready to do a quick test print. So I have an ink pad here and I'm going to press the ink pad onto the stamp, and I can already see from this inking where I have excess rubber that needs to be cleared away. But the ink can make the block very slippery, so I'm going to print a few times and you'll see that the ink has stained the block, which is great. So now I'm going to start doing something that's known as cleanup. And I'm actually going to take a slightly smaller blade to do that. The amount of time and effort you spend in cleanup, I think, is up to you, how interested you are, how much of a perfectionist you are, how clean you want your image to be. I don't mind some stray marks. Sometimes, in fact, I do it on purpose. But for a stamp like this that I think is very graphic, I would like to have the stray marks pretty much gone. So you'll notice now I've got the small blade out. You can clean up with whatever blade you feel most comfortable with. So at this point, I'm going to print it. I'm going to carve away anything that I see. I'm going to print it. I'm going to carve away anything I see. Cleanup can take a long time, or it can be quite a quick process. It's just up to really how much of a perfectionist you are and how good your carve is. So I like to mount my stamp. I find it easier for printing, especially when it's small like this. You don't have to, but how I do it is something I teach in the Carve December class. You can also find your own method that works for you. And I should mention also that I put a magnet on the back of my ink pads so that I can even just ink up like this. And I do have a YouTube tutorial all about that. So here I'm going to do this kind of plus formation. You can see as I print it why it was important to carve the back of the stamp so that it made sense. That's what allows me to know where to print because I can see the basic outline. And it always amazes me how a little scrap of rubber can be so enormously powerful, right? Just trying to decide if this pattern, if I want to, might as well since it runs off the edge. So stamp carving is not an expensive hobby, especially if you're creating small stamps like these. You can buy an inexpensive tool and a couple pieces of rubber and you can make lots and lots. You could make all 31 of your stamps for Carve December with just a few pieces of rubber because you can see that you can make them incredibly tiny. If you just have one ink pad, make it a black ink pad. You know, you don't need a lot of other stuff. But here you go. Here is my beautiful finished tag. Hand carved stamp, hand stamped. It looks fabulous.
So thanks so much for watching this video. I hope you will like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I hope you will carve a stamp in December. I know that we would love to have you, whether you're gonna carve 31 stamps or just one stamp. You know, it's a wonderful thing to do, and I think that everybody is creative, and that means you.